Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here, and now, before we do begin, let us give a brief little review. In the last part, a number of events have happened. Now, Deku and his group, they, along with the help of others, took the radio station, and they did so without suffering from any casualties. Now, because of this, Deku and his group, they are being seen in a bit more of a favorable light. It's either them or the military. You can negotiate with Izuku Midoriya. You can talk with him. He doesn't use force most of the time. However, the military, they wanted to have control of the station for a few reasons. And whenever they came to talk to the Manor Group, Deku made things perfectly clear. He wants them to ease up on everybody, make fair trades, and not muscle in on everybody else. Fact is, this is their city. And if they want to be a part of this city, they need to be fair. And he also wanted their help taking out the hive. Now, the military commander obviously laughed in Izuku's face, and he talked about a few things. He expressed to Izuku that they're willing to play ball. However, he needs to head into the city and find out what they're actually fucking dealing with. Because right now, he clearly is a novice whenever it does come to his hometown. And Deku, he did not appreciate that. However, this meant quite a lot. Now, with that being said, Deku's group, they are gearing up for both a war of attrition. They need to gear up for that and a war against the military. They don't know how long zombies would last if they took out the hive. They don't know how long the military will last unless they have supplies. Fact is, the idea is simple. Deal with the hive and hopefully not suffer many casualties there. Deal with the military during the next winter and hope their supply train is poisoned enough that they will literally drink themselves to death. Now, it's a bit of a messed up thing, but it's the only option they really do have. They don't know anything about their enemy, and Izuku and a few people are currently driving to a tunnel. Mr. Steen has informed them. The tunnel will lead them further into the city. Fact is, it's part of a highway system, and the area where it will pop them out at will be somewhere closer to the middle. It stretches for a few miles. He doesn't know exactly, but he knows it's got to be more than 3 or maybe even 5. It's going to be dangerous. And there are parts where the light, it does pop through the top. But that is maybe because of damage to both the tunnel itself and to the ceiling. It is at risk for collapse. However, he's taken this tunnel before, and as long as you stay quiet and stay in the dark, don't knock anything over or make any sound besides you walking, you should be okay. And the group, they do get to currently pull up. As right now, it does consist of Stain, Deku, Bakugo, Tokage, and Ochako. And these 4, yeah. Sadly, Deku and Bakugo both agree to go into the city, go closer into the center. Tokage, she tagged along because she was curious to see what's going on closer in the city. Maybe see about heading back to her own home. However, there also is Ochako. Ochako, she once made the long, long way around and got to her own home before. However, there's an idea now forming in her mind. After everything that's been going on, everything that has happened, and, well, Izuku easing up a little bit, them being more around people, she's realizing a few things. Deku isn't the only person who's gotten more intense. I mean, a lot of people have. She's talked with some people from other groups and found out many things. A lot of people want to keep their, well, let's just say their ways. But others have had to change. Izuku changing his ways was a part of surviving, and she's understanding that a bit. But at the same time, she can't just change her own ways on her own. She's got a lot going through her mind. And it certainly is a bit of a strange thing. She does still care for Izuku, but her way of looking at it has changed a little bit. She doesn't want to compromise herself to be with him, even though he has saved her life on a number of occasions. She knows that he's reliable. Deep down, there's still got to be a good person somewhere. And it's just going to take a lot to draw that out. Though at the same time, the threat they all are currently facing still is a problem. She doesn't know when the next time he'll spill blood is. The next time he'll hurt, he'll kill. God forbid what he's willing to do anymore. She doesn't know where he draws that line in the sand. And we do currently have a Deku, who does go to stare at the tunnel. Currently, one side of it, with it being partially collapsed, as Stain does go to bring his own hand up. Currently, him dropping a bag and pulling out a rope, talking about it, turning and expressing. All of them loop this around their belt loops, and make sure to be at least 3 or 4 paces apart. Fact is, he wants them to make sure not to run into each other in the dark, maybe even 5 paces, but make sure they all stay together. And to keep a knife in your hand. If you hear something, then stop. Don't move. Freeze. If something grabs you, try not to scream and try to stab it. That's all he can really tell them. They're going to go into the dark, and they are going to spend time there for their eyes to all adjust. And whenever they all do finally adjust, he wants them to be ready to move. It's going to be a bit of a walk. And everyone, they do understand. Currently, them tying themselves to the line and heading into the tunnel. And Stain, he does this one draw one of his swords. Right now him holding it in his hand and going to step in, expressing a few things. Him currently holding the rope in one of his hands instead of having it tied to his belt. Now, Deku and his group are a lot more surprised. Currently, them all heading into the underground tunnel and trying to make sure that everything seems to be okay. I mean, they're all got their guard up, and Izuku himself is worried about a few things. Not only about the situation in front of him, but how to deal with, well, a few other things. In his mind, there's a problem. I mean, he needs to talk with Setsuna. Maybe privately, but there hasn't been a moment like that in a minute. It's just been interesting. He's got to confront her. See about why she came to him almost, what now, 2 weeks ago? And it does go through his mind. Currently, him walking by something as there is where a hand does get to come out. Deku turning and going to bring his hand up. Him grabbing the thing by the arm and bringing up the knife, stabbing them in the head. And Deku, he will slowly lower their hand down onto the car window before pulling his knife out and going to turn. Him going to move forwards. And Deku, he does stare at some of the vehicles. Right now, them walking past a turned over bus, and Deku, he'll going to watch. Currently, the hole in the ceiling that is there. And Stain would bring his hand up. Him bringing it out in front of Izuku before looking at them and bringing his finger to his mouth, backing up all the way against the wall, maintaining a spot in the shadow. And this, it is somewhat intriguing. And Deku, he does a turn looking at the light. It's a little bit blinding, a little strange, but then he does hear a sound. And then there's where something does get to move by. Currently, it going to slither around. And Deku, he watches as a red puddle does go to slide out of... What the hell? It currently going to move. This thing on the ground looks like a slug. Like an actual slug, but it's red. It's also moving. And this massive creature, it does begin to move. Deku is seeing as it is more like a snake. However, there's a problem. He can only see part of it. The rest of it is presumably in the shadows, on the other side. 20, no, 25 feet at the most away. And that's a bit more concerning. Stain going to walk along the wall and staring down at his feet. And Deku, he doesn't follow Mr. Stain. As their actions with the creature, it is partially moving to the light again. Deku turning his head as right now, there actually is also Bakugo and the other two, staring at the strange creature. And Bakugo, he goes to stare right at it. Right now him turning his head away because of something he thought he saw. Because he thought, for a minute, he saw a human skull poking out of the side of that monster. And he doesn't even want to know where that came from. He doesn't want to know what that thing, how that thing operates. And currently they do to move through the tunnel more, finding areas to avoid the light and also trying to make sure not to interact with any more zombies, cause any more sound than they already have. In this, it's quite the predicament. Currently Stain finding the side of the tunnel and them walking through. And Deku, he is rather happy to be out of there. Though, it is a bit more concerning. Deku, he's not too sure what to make of that. His mind is thinking about it. It looked like a serpent, but it couldn't have been a snake? No. It was just part of something, but yeah, no. It was big, and it must be part of something bigger. Maybe that's not a good thought. Deku's the one trying to shake it off. As everybody, their eyes are trying to adjust to the scene in front of them. Currently them on a stretch of highway and ready to head into the city. Currently, Deku walking over to the side of the highway and looking down, seeing a bit, and seeing what to walk over. Him currently pointing to a building and talking about a few things. Expressing to everybody, they're going to make the jump over, and then they're going to head out and head over to the burned corner. There's a lot of things he wants all of them to see. Though, when they do see a zombie, let him know. They'll need to dress accordingly. There's a proper dress code. Along with that, all of them better be aware. They might also have to change their clothes. And everyone, they do goes on turn and look at Stain. And the man will get a turn back, expressing. Currently, him going to take a few steps backwards and going to take a running start. Him leaping off the side of the highway and smashing onto the building. And Deku, he would turn, looking at everybody as he's going to take a breath in and going to walk backwards. Him going to follow. Now, everybody they do begin to move. Currently, Stain at a steady pace while everybody they are running. Right now, them leaping over buildings and smashing onto others as they're also trying to keep pace. And they're actually Suzuku. Currently, Deku, he does go to run. And there actually is where Stain, he is actually turn and fall. Right now, him make his way down the building as you actually have Deku. As we actually do have Deku, who currently would get on the side of the building and stand there. Right now, him bringing his hand out and stepping off. Currently, him falling a few feet and grabbing onto the railing. Right now, Deku then gonna turn and leap onto what should be the drain pipe. Him beginning to scale his way down. And Deku, he is being careful. Currently, him gonna turn and throw himself off of the building, pushing off it and spinning his body around, throwing out his hands and grabbing onto the emergency railing that's on the side of a building. Him turning and jumping backwards. Him going to do the same thing. And currently Stain does stand there on the ground. And he does gonna turn looking at a few people. And the man, he does just not turn. Right out them with a few civilians who do not sit there. And Stain, he does get to bring his hand up. Right out him watching one of the crazies in front of him, holding a zombie by a leash, holding it back from attacking some people. And Deku, when he does get to land, he does just stand there. And Stain does go to express, turning to Izuku, about exactly the type of horrors that go on here. And Deku, he does stare at a few things. Currently the rest of the group climbing down and seeing the situation. And there currently is Ochako. Ochako does a stare on. Currently, there are men and women using zombies to scare people. And this zombie is being held back by a leash around their neck. And it's still trying to at least move towards that person. Move towards them. Attack them and take them out. The person's on the ground, visibly injured. And their friend is unconscious next to them. There's a wound on them. And it doesn't look too good. And one of the crazies would get a turn. Currently, them holding up a severed human hand. And looking at Deku and Stain. And the people do stepping forwards. Talking about a few things. Currently, the person holding the zombie on the leash, pulling it backwards, as the zombie does a fall backwards and smash on the ground. The person turning their head and seeing a man with black hair, standing next to a man with a scarf. And Deku does come walking up. Right out of them, counting out how many people are involved in this group. And Deku, he counts out 6, because that must be his lucky number today. And this, it does somewhat annoy him. The man stepping forwards and bringing his hand up, letting go of his zombie as it does begin to shamble towards Izuku. And Deku stares at the man. Him turning to Stain, as Stain will get a turn, looking at Deku and nodding. Him going to bring his hand down and grab a knife, throwing it up and stabbing it into the zombie's head. And everyone will go to watch the zombie fall backwards and hit the ground. The men clapping their hands and talking about how that was a good trick. And Deku stares on. And Ochako does just stare at one of the women who do stand with this group. They're crazy. All of them are crazies. And the lady will don't step forwards. Her expressing, bringing her own hands up, about how she does have a trick too. Her bring her hands down to her fingers, and biting into both of them for we're going to pull them back. And currently, she just start writing something out in the air. Right now, it going to not float there. And Deku stares on. She's using a quirk of some kind. And Deku would talk about it, bring his hand out and talking about how he does have one other trick though. But first, he wants to know who they are. You want to know who we are? One of the people stepping forwards, bringing their hands up, talking about how they own the little area here, the whole block. So, exactly who is he? And Deku would turn, looking at his group as Setsuna does stare at Deku. And Deku turns to Ochako, him looking back and telling them. He's somebody they really don't want to mess with. And one of the men do step forwards, bring up an axe in their hand, talking about how they are going to cut him piece by piece. And Deku, he doesn't hold up his left hand, showing off that somebody already took one. And the man, he just stare at that. And Deku will go to express. He wants to tell them who he is, so he wants them to listen to him real quick. Deku bringing his hand back into his waistband, and talking about how, pulling up a revolver, he's the owner of this gun, and he's got one hell of a trick for all of them. Currently somebody staring at Deku. Them gonna bring their own hands up as Deku gonna turn. Him throwing a knife out and hitting the projectile they toss at him. And Deku pulls down the hammer. Currently Deku squeezing it and then gonna turn, firing at all the crazies as all of them do start to rush forwards. And Stain gonna bring his own hand down, grabbing one of his own knives and throwing it directly into Crazy's eye. The man falling down to the ground and going to hit. Currently 2 of them all down. And they're actually Setsuna, Hood gonna bring her own hands down and grab her own knives. Her tossing two out and hitting somebody in the shoulder. The person going to bring their hand down and smash into the ground. Currently the ground being a bit unstable, as Deku, he does actually step backwards and away, because that girl is using super strength. And Stain, he does as somewhat step forwards. Him bringing his katana and going to actually rush forwards. Him slicing the girl's head off and going to turn. Bringing his own hand up as one of the men you're trying to throw down that axe on a Stain. And Stain would bring his own hand up, grabbing the axe with a piece of wood and slicing off their hands. Before going to spin the blade around and going to slice the top of their head off. Now, Stain does that take care of everybody relatively quickly. Well, the group, they do just won't stand there. And Stain will get then going to turn. Him looking at the carnage in front of him and staring at the blood on his sword. Before expressing about how all of them might want to get changed. And everyone, they do just don't stare on at the bloody garments these people were wearing. And Deku, he has a walkover, asking Stain about how this place might be. He wants to know what exactly they're expecting to walk into. And Stain would bring his hand up, currently him staring at the blood on his sword, before bringing up his elbow and going to actually wipe down the blade with something on his arm. And this, it does fill the silence. The man turning and going to walk. And this does concern everybody. And right now, they need to change. Yeah, some of these clothes are not good. But some of this stuff isn't right. That on Deku's mind. Currently, him holding up something made of small little... Oh. These are bones. And Deku just stare at that. Currently, him a bit more surprised. As right now everyone, they do get to change their wardrobe. Now, with that being said, let us cut over to UA. Deku's group isn't the only group encountering strange new things. Melissa, Todoroki, Momo, and Jiro. This group headed out to UA because of a plan. Send a robot into the hive. Send one into the hive to investigate what's happening there. They know where one tunnel is, and it's a good opportunity. I mean, hey, find one of the gas trucks they have, get one of the ones the other groups do have, and drive over and just fill, and toss in a match. That was the plan. But I mean, how well would that work? Light a tunnel up and the hive and piss everyone off? From what the military guys did give them, they've taken down one tunnel before. They know they exist. And it didn't end very well if you piss that thing off. So, yeah, that's definitely not an option. They could send something inside. The hive might know it's there, but it's not made of flesh. So it might either ignore it or not care for it. I mean, they don't know how intelligent this thing is. They don't know anything about it. It should ignore them. But clearly it does know whenever there is danger. As long as the robot doesn't show danger or is dangerous to them, they shouldn't have any reason to attack it. It's not made of flesh, it's not made of things that they can eat or absorb. So it should be okay. And that does go through their mind. Currently the vehicle pulling up to a gate. And everybody, they do just stare at the remains of UA. The building that does still stand. The building that should have been a marker and a martyr for heroism. Destroyed. still standing, but windows blown out and bodies littering the area. And it does somewhat annoy them. Currently, Todoroki going just won't stand there and staring at the school. A lot happened, but seeing the actual aftermath, seeing how the blood got swept away by storms, seeing how things have remained, I mean, it means a lot. Todoroki gonna walk over to an area, looking up and seeing a window. And Todoroki, he does wonder if there's anybody even here. They all left a group of people inside this room, no, this school, to die. Up in that room. They just left. And this, it does run through his mind. Momo walking over and up to Todoroki. Bring her hand out and grabbing onto his. Him going to turn as she goes to squeeze his hand. Her walking past as he does somewhat feel a little bit better. And as it doesn't happen, we do actually have where Melissa does get express. With power back on, she does want to head to the principal's office. Maybe find out more. Figure out a few things and see what's going on. If she's correct, then they can do a bit. And then they can find out what is happening. They need information on the robots. Information on passwords, facilities, you name it. I mean, it's easier to rebuild a robot than it would be to repair one. UA had a massive budget. Fact is, they could be sitting above a gold mine. And it's left untapped. Though it does also make her question other hero schools like Shigechi High, and whether or not they are sitting on the same gold mine. Untapped resources and the ability to fabricate technology. I mean, the circuits might be old and a little dusty, but given some power and some juice, they can get them up and running. They could potentially have an army of robots. And this, it does alarm Todoroki, because he is thinking about it, along with even Jiro. Jiro remembers seeing the zero pointer. The moment she saw that thing, as big as a building, it was intense, towering over them. Those robots were big, really, really big. They're meant to give off the presence of an unstoppable force, like as big as Mount Lady. I mean, in theory, those things can rip apart tons and tons of zombies. I mean, the 1-pointers, 2-pointers, and 3-pointers, you have to use a quirk to take them down. UA had multiple 0-pointers. One for every city they had to build. So, if you just take those robots, an army, and throw them at the hive can be taken down. The hive can be brought down. They can have the entire city. Not just that, the technology, the things that they can make at UA. This school, it can become the #1 safe haven. It's a good idea. And Jiro, for this first time in months, genuinely, since all this shit started, she feels happiness, hope building in her chest. And it's nice. This warm feeling of knowing things can be okay. It's good. And her face has a smile stretched across from it. And we do currently have with the group, they do get to head inside. Them a lot more cautious and encountering a few zombies. Some here have been stuck. Some here haven't really moved. Surprisingly, this place doesn't have a lot of things here. Though, they did find something in the cafeteria. They found another pit. another hole into the hive. And this, it does sort of alarm them. Run Todoroki staring at that, a lot more concerned. Yue is farther out there. It's miles away from the other pit, the other hole they found at that one place. And this is beginning to pose a bit of a question. How far do those tunnels stretch if they go from all over the city, all over different areas? And currently that is a question that they all do have. And Melissa, she is running it through her mind. This sort of tunnel, it's smaller, more narrow. It's not meant for a lot of things. The fact is, a person could fit inside, but she doesn't doubt anything bigger could try to crawl through. They don't know why these things even exist. Her staring at the tunnel and thinking about it. It's almost like a corrupted idea of a slip and slide. At least that's the way it seems. It's a pulsating mass of flesh. Well, slip and slide isn't even the right idea. You definitely go down it like one, but it's more like a slide. A narrow, cramped space that you can't see much of inside. It could go down for miles. It could go down who knows how long. But that's just one thing. They don't want to know what's on the other side, or what could come through it. And right now they do gotta move along. Currently somebody stalking the group. Them staying there right in the doorway, and going to take a step backwards and away. Them giggling a little bit. Right now someone turning their head hearing that sound. And this, it does want to alarm Momo. Her a little concerned. As she's on turn facing that direction, bringing up a bow and arrow and pulling it back. Her gonna wait, and going to whistle. And everyone, they do turn to Momo, who just created a sound that does get someone echo a little bit. But nothing follows. Nothing happens. They don't hear the rush or something just clawing through the hallway. They expected something. Everybody got ready. On a moment's notice, they just pulled their weapons. But nothing. Nothing happened. And to Momo, that sets it off a little bit more. There is something inside her mind telling her there are eyes on her. And it's concerning. One of them going to turn and make their way to Nezu's office. And Melissa has a lot going through her mind. Uncle All Might. Where he is. If he's alive. If he's, well, still alive. In his corrupted form. Being the number one hero meant he was one of the first people to turn. It's a definite in her mind. And one she'd rather not think about. And there currently is at Nezu's office, where Melissa does go someone sit down in his chair. And there currently is a cage in the corner, where Principal Nezu, he does sit. Currently him, somewhat, half melted in a bit of a puddle. And everyone, they do just don't stare on. Nezu sitting there and bringing his hands to his head, rocking back and forth and muttering a few things. Him trying to just keep the semblance of insanity he does have left. The quirk he does have running its way through its system. And right now there actually is where Melissa, she does at least type in a few passwords. And then there is where she's going to get the error. Then another error. And another error again. She's trying passwords that she does know. And, well, there's a sticky note here. But it's covered in blood. She can presume that one of the heroes outside were one of Nezu's victims. He came to his rational mind, then locked himself up in a cage. And it does worry her. She heard much of Principal Nezu. Her gonna turn and staring at him. And Nezu does not sit there. Right now, him in a skinnier form. And Melissa does get to hear it. Nezu currently sitting there, rocking back and forth, muttering to himself. They need to go, they need to go, they need to go. Not safe, not safe. No, no, no. Sound, no. No place, nowhere, no way. How, so, where, so, when, so. When to, go to, now to. Mizu muttering incoherently. And there is where Melissa would bring her hand up. Her going to somewhat bring up a stick and poke out at the cage. Renault Nezu, hearing the sound of metal and wood collide, looking up and going to stretch his hand out. And Melissa, we just won't see it. The form his body currently inhabits, his decaying body but well-rounded mind. And Nezu looks up at all of them, telling them, they need to leave, they need to go, they need to run, need to run, go, stay, no, safe. And Melissa, she stares on. Nezu is trying to plead with them to run, plead with them to leave. He's trying to tell them that this place is no longer safe. It's no longer the place it used to be. The place of thinking it used to be. And Melissa, she just won't bend down. Her telling Mr. Nezu that her name is Melissa Shield, and she's here to try and make sure this place can be safe again. The fact is, if he can understand her, everybody watching on, and Momo would go turn her head, her hearing a sound, thinking about what might be in the hallway, her pulling her bow and aiming outside the door. Melissa continuing on, trying to ask Mr. Nezu about the password for his terminal, about the password for his computer. And Nezu, he doesn't want to stare up at Melissa, and she can see the thoughts in his eyes, the actual brain that's still working behind this decaying form. And Nezu, he would tell her. Right now, her bring her own hand up and writing down the password on a piece of paper. Her a little bit more intrigued. Nezu is here and alive. She wants to put him out of his misery, but she does want to get some answers first. Get something out of this. And Nezu, he will tell her again. She needs to go. She needs to run. The students roam the halls. Students roam the halls. Mr. Nezu, there's practically nobody here. No, don't understand. Move. Run. Go. Go. She's coming. Melissa's staying on, a bit more confused, as Nezu looks right at her, lunging towards the cage and smashing into the wall, telling her they are here. They are hungry. And they are going to be killed. And currently Melissa is confused, as the window to Nezu's office does get smashed in. Or now somebody smashing onto the ground and going to stand back up. Currently them covered in glass and bleeding. And Momo would immediately go to turn. Her turning and firing the bow at this intruder. Them being shot directly into the neck as they do still don't stand there. One of them bring their hand up and grabbing onto the arrow. And Todoroki turns his head on with everybody else. And there actually is Jiro, who does just stare on a lot more alarmed. Because there's no goddamn way she should be alive. And Mina Ashito does go to melt through the arrow. Her going to rip it back through and stare at everybody, giving them all a smile. Talking about how they came back. And everyone, they stare on with horror. As with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed. And yes, I'd rather not leave you guys on a cliffhanger, but a lot of people have been interrupting me while I've been trying to record. And it's been very fucking annoying. So I'm going to make the next part action-packed, and hopefully I don't get annoyed. I'm jumping over my own words. I'm going to try and make the next part action-packed, because everybody seems to want my fucking attention right now. And hopefully, that won't be the case for the next part. I've already had 5 interruptions and 10 re recordings of just this alone. With that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed.